Hello there. I have written a review of the Canon R5 Mark II and the R1, and that is up on provideocoalition.com right now. There is a link in the description of this video. I haven't made a video version of it because my job was to write an article. I was part of the group that was sent to Arizona to go test it out in specific shooting situations. It felt much more like Canon was looking for, well, obviously to give us first hands-on look so that people could know the camera was being released, but also it seemed like they were looking for feedback because we were on beta software or firmware, whatever. And, you know, every, I don't know, 5-10 minutes that I was shooting with that camera, someone would walk up to me and be like, hey, what are your thoughts? What would you change? What, you know, and all the conversations I had, even outside of the testing window, and we were just hanging out, lunch, whatever. They were constantly hitting all of us up and asking for feedback. So hopefully some of the things that I suggested will be implemented. But that's why you haven't seen a video version of that review. Just go to my article on provideocoalition.com, give that a read. It's got all my findings. The high level is, I'll knock out two of the high level things. First of all, R5 II, incredible camera. I am a cinematographer. I can't really say I've used DSLRs or mirrorless for video very often. That is partially true, actually. Fujifilm X-T3. I've used this for video. At one point, why did I first get this? Well, I first got this because I needed a good stills camera, and then the video part of it came after. The camera I had before this for stills, Nikon D90. That's how much photography I do outside of film photography. I shoot medium format film normally. But this does great video. And then, you know, when I needed a small camera, I just did for video. That's not the point. Point is, I don't do a lot of hybrid shooting. And so when I was invited to this event, I was a little confused because I was like, I'm not a photographer. You know, Petapixel was there. I met this dude, Jared Poland. I found out he's very popular on YouTube, but I didn't know him at the time. I don't spend that much time on YouTube, and when I do, it's not, I watch dumb shit. Anyway, and Canon told me, a representative from Canon told me, well, we invited you specifically to talk for your opinion on the video functions. So with the R5 II, the video is insane. I mean, it took me a while to get used to the functions of it because it's not laid out in a traditional cinema camera fashion. There's a kind of more granular stuff, but the high level is 8K. Sweet. It can do 4K, obviously 1080. It can do 2K up to 180 and 4K up to 120 frames per second. I tend to never really go over 24. Honestly, when I do slow-mo, I usually just do 48. So that's really cool, though. All the kinds of flavors of RAW. One really neat thing is, if you are a fan of this channel, you know that I invented the owl color picture profiles for the Canon cinema cameras. Also, there is a update to that coming soon that I'm working on that's a little more universal that I think people will appreciate. I made owl color because I needed it, and now I feel like I've outgrown it in my skills. Not that it's not, I don't stand by the picture profile. It's still great, but I've learned more since then. So anyway, the R5 II, the R5C, and the R1 all have the same picture profile stuff as the cinema cameras. One question I got asked all the time is like, hey, I've got an R5. Can you make owl color for that? I couldn't because it didn't have the same granular color, or any DSLR, you know. With the R5 II, R5C, and R1, I can. So if that ever comes around, maybe I can do that. It had breathing compensation, which I found very cool. I know Sony has that, and I was very jealous of the Sony shooters. And now the R5 II and R1 have breathing compensation. Very cool. Also, a feature I like that is similar to image stabilization, which it does have. It's got, the sensor is more or less on a gimbal, you know, whatever you want to call it, in-body image stabilization. It's not electronic, it's real. But auto leveling, you know, when I'm holding a camera, I tend to kind of, you know, I'm never quite straight, and it auto leveling worked great. I ran around with it on, works awesome. Autofocus was snappy as all hell. A few things where it would kind of lose, but that could be the beta firmware. Also, I was filming 1 million people in the way for people who are just shooting cinema. You know, this could be a great option. I don't think it'll fail you there. I've probably missed some things. Just go read the article. With the R1, it's basically the same, except it can do 6K RAW instead of 8K or 4K compressed. Most of the features are the same video-wise. One thing that I saw people complaining about was that the R1 only has a 24 megapixel sensor, and I don't see, they're like, it's not a flagship. Well, it's not made for you. The R1 was literally made for the Olympics, you know? And when you're shooting the Olympics, you want to be able to use, you're not going to need anything bigger than 24 megapixels, honestly. But also, that buffer, you know, you're going to want to be able to hammer down 40 frames per second in RAW and not have it freeze on you. You know, at 50 or whatever the R5 is, I tried that and it locked. Well, it only does 30 frames per second, but it did not lock up, but slow down after some time. The R1 was just hammering through. That's why it has lower megapixelage, but that's, you know, that's an F1 car. It doesn't need, anyway, go read the article. The reason I made this video is because I put out there, hey, I got hands on this camera. Does anyone have any questions? And I asked Canon these questions directly. So the questions were, got them listed here. Someone asked, does the HDMI, if you use the HDMI, does that black out the on-camera monitor? And the answer is no. I'm going to read their official answers here. So in video mode, the camera can operate with either the external monitor plus LCD, which is actually something I realized I took a photo of when going through the menus afterwards, or external monitor only. In stills mode, the camera will operate as external monitor only. So I don't know why you would use, well, I'm not a stills person. I'm not going to comment, but for video, you can have the LCD on and the external monitor. That has been addressed. I know that was a concern for some people. I asked for an official readout speed for rolling shutter. The response was, in regards to the EOS R1, faster readout from the stacked CMOS sensor has reduced the rolling shutter distortion of the electronic shutter to about 60% compared to the R3. Minus 40% versus the R3. Oh, same thing, just said differently, which is on the similar level of the mechanical shutter of the EOS 1DX Mark III. In regards to the R5 Mark II, faster readout from the stacked CMOS sensor has reduced the rolling shutter distortion in the electronic shutter to about 40% of that of the R5, 60% down versus the R5. So that is pretty considerable. I did not test the R5, but I can tell you just from handling the R5 Mark II, the rolling shutter performance was pretty good to my eye. I asked about time code because it doesn't have a time code port. These are kind of things that, you know, as a cinematographer, I kind of need. This is why I don't tend to use mirrorless. I said, is time code via HDMI in, out, or both? And she said, HDMI timecode options are on or off. Rec command on or off. That didn't really answer my question, did it? Well, we'll find out later. Again, this camera isn't going to come out for a while. I asked about SRAW on the R5 Mark II because SRAW, if you don't know, basically it's recording. You have that 8K sensor. When you shoot RAW, you need the top speed. That's all it'll allow. But SRAW will let you shoot 4K instead of 8K, save you some space. So I said, what is that doing? Is it oversampling? Is it ditching pixels? Is it line? What is it? And they responded, although we cannot discuss the details, these images are not oversampled. So there you go. Someone asked, are you able to overlay aspect markers? Which is something that I would certainly potentially need. And initially they just said like 1:1, 4:5, 5:4, and I was like, oh, that's a bump. And then they emailed me back and they're like, actually, you could pretty much overlay anything. So I'll just read them out. 1:1, 4:5, 5:4, 9:16, 4:3, 13:9, 14:9, 137, 1375:1, 166:1, 175:1, 185, 190, 235, and 239 as of this firmware. If you need 240 and just shoot 239, you're gonna edit it different anyway. It's just an overlay. I don't think you'll notice that pixel. Someone asked about setting the white balance, whether or not you could aim it at something, a gray card, for instance, and then have it do that, or if you had to do the photo thing. And it sounds like you have to do the photo thing. So with custom white balance, you can set the white balance using an image captured under the same lighting as the shooting location. To register custom white balances, you can either register a picture taken during this process or register an image recorded on a card. Oh, you can have a pre-recorded image. That's interesting. Up to 5 custom white balances can be registered to the camera. Register separate custom white balances for still photos and movies as needed. It's possible to register an image from the scene, or you can also shoot a gray card or standard 18% gray reflector. I will say when I was using auto white balance, it seemed to do a very good job and didn't do all these crazy changes and stuff. There was like a mode I remember seeing, like ambient priority. That seemed pretty cool. I asked, what is the dynamic range in C-Log 2 or RAW? They are saying 16 plus stops. I didn't get an official number. We'll just have to wait to get official numbers on that. However, I will say I was stunned by the dynamic range. I've got a C500 Mark II. I've got a C70. The C500 Mark II actually has better dynamic range than the C70 in lab tests. CineD has those tests for you. And I agree. The C70 just has lower noise floor, but not more dynamic range. Anyway, they're saying 16 plus stops. I bet it won't test at that, but I bet it will test freakishly high. If it's over, I think 13.5, that's what the LF is coming in at. Tested signal to noise ratio of 2. And the C500 Mark II is like 13.2 or something like that. I don't know what the Alexa 35 is. Probably is more because of that crazy highlight retention. But yeah, I bet it's really freakishly high. I was shooting in the Arizona sun, white party umbrellas, like pool umbrellas, and then looking into the shadow area of like a hallway, could recover all of it. Really great dynamic range. Very impressed in that regard. Someone said that RAW was 14-bit. That is photo. RAW video is 12-bit. They also say, additionally, HDMI RAW is also available at the standard RAW quality versus light RAW or SRAW. And then I asked cheekily, will the C400 have breathing compensation and or auto level? Because specifically breathing compensation, lens breathing is one of those things that I have absolutely no use for. You know, there's certainly arguments to be made for chromatic aberration or very low contrast or what, you know, certain lens characteristics that technically could be considered faults, if you will. I don't believe that focused breathing is one of them. I think that's something that should always be negated if possible. There's very little creative reason to use focus breathing, in my opinion. So focus breathing compensation, pretty cool. I got very excited about that. They say the auto level function is made possible by the in-body image stabilizer moving to stabilize the image horizon. Of course. Cinema EOS C400 does not have an IBIS system to perform the auto level function. Boo. Additionally, C400 does not feature breathing compensation. Double boo. And then they said, overall, we cannot comment on future product plans. So, pretty boilerplate response. I imagine maybe breathing compensation. I feel like that's a digital thing, not something that has to do with the IBIS or whatever. But yeah, so that's the answers to your questions. I hope that was helpful. If you have any more questions, I'd be happy to do a follow-up. Like I said, go read that review on provideocoalition.com before asking those questions. And yeah, it's an exciting, the R5 II is certainly an exciting camera. Personally, I would pick it over the R1, although the R1 body, once I got used to it, was very compelling. There were certain button positions that I preferred on the R1 versus the R5 and vice versa. They're different cameras. But if you are a photographer, if you're a photographer primarily who needs video features, the R1 clear winner. You know, especially if you're shooting sports in any capacity and you're a professional. If you are a photographer who primarily focuses on video, R5 obvious. You know, if you want, I won't editorialize too much because I'm not a professional photographer. I can't speak to professional photographer needs, only my own. But for video, R5 II very compelling. Certainly a pricey camera, but if you need that photo backup, they look great. Oh, I did leave this out of the high level features, but one of the cool things that I was told that Panasonic did first, but hey, I don't care if anyone steals anyone else's cool features, is subject priority focus. So I mentioned the autofocus earlier. There's a way where you can like just take a picture of a group or a person or whatever, and they don't even have to be big in the frame. And you can assign the priority of focus in, you just go this face, that's number one, this face, that number two, and then you can rearrange them as you see fit. And the camera will, when it sees that face, and it sees it quick, it grabs it quick, it will focus on that person first. It'll assign the autofocus to that person. I had heard, obviously for weddings, that could be incredibly important. And someone was saying like, oh, but what if I don't want it to do that? Well, just toggle it off. Assign a button to toggling it off. You can assign buttons, right? So just do that. But for, you know, cinema work, it's awesome, right? If you're a run and gun one person band type thing, just assigning the you know, if there's 2 people in a scene, 3 people in a scene, and you're only focused on one person, that's rad, right? It's, you know, it was a very cool feature and I liked it. So yeah, that's that. Read the article, ask any further questions. I hope that was helpful, and I will see you in the future.